It was a rainy Tuesday morning when Clara pushed open the heavy steel doors of Iron Forge Boxing Club, her thrift store windbreaker soaked through and her canvas shoes squelching with each step. The place reeked of sweat, leather, and pride, the kind of pride that made people strut instead of walk. She stood out immediately. Her hair was pulled into a frizzy bun, her clothes loose and faded, her eyes wide but steady. She carried a single old duffel bag over her shoulder, the zipper broken and hanging open like a tired mouth. Nobody noticed her at first. Not really. The gym was full of energy. Gloves slamming against heavy bags, trainers barking instructions, young guys shadowboxing in front of smudged mirrors like they were auditioning for a movie. The air crackled with testosterone and rhythm. But once she walked past the ring and asked the receptionist, "Is there a coach I could speak to about training?" Heads started to turn. A coach? The receptionist, a bored-looking guy with a man bun and sleeve tattoos, raised an eyebrow. "You here for your kid or something?" "Number I want to train." He blinked, looked her up and down. "You? Train here?" She nodded once, calm, like she'd already expected this. That's when the whispers began. Is this a joke? Maybe she thinks this is like a self-defense class or something. Maybe she's one of those TikTok pranksters. One of the younger boxers, a cocky kid named Tyler, made a loud show of looking around. "Where's the hidden camera crew? Come on, we're being punked, right?" Clara didn't flinch. She just waited patiently as the receptionist muttered something under his breath and gestured toward the far side of the gym. "You'll want to talk to Dom. He's the head coach." She thanked him softly and walked through the maze of clanking weights and loud grunts. A few people laughed as she passed. One even clapped mockingly. Dom was wrapping a young fighter's hands when she approached. He was a wiry man in his 50s, with a sharp nose and colder eyes than anyone else in the gym. He looked like a man who didn't waste words or time. "I'm Clara," she said. "I'd like to learn." He studied her for all of 2 seconds. "You ever boxed before?" "No." "You an athlete of some kind?" "Number not really. What do you want from this?" "I want to fight," she said, with a voice like still water. Quiet, but somehow impossible to ignore. Dom gave a humorless chuckle. "You're not the first to walk in here thinking they can learn to fight in a few weeks, swing a few punches, and feel like a badass." "I'm not here to feel like a badass," she said. "I'm here because I don't want to be invisible anymore." That caught him off guard. Just for a moment. Then he tossed her a pair of old gloves. "Fine. Let's see if you can even make it through warm-up." The warm-up nearly killed her. Clara stumbled through jumping rope, drenched in sweat by the third round. Her arms shook during push-ups. Her legs burned through footwork drills. Tyler and a few of the other fighters took turns making little jabs. "You're gonna pass out." "Someone call an ambulance now, just to be safe." "She's gonna cry." But Clara didn't cry. She didn't talk either. She just kept going, slow, clumsy, and clearly out of her depth. But she never stopped. Not once. By the end of the hour, she was on her knees, breathing hard, soaked in sweat. Dom watched her, said nothing. The next day, she came back, and the next. The jokes kept coming. Every time she tried the bag, someone was there to critique her stance. Every time she stepped into the ring for footwork drills, they made comments about her balance, her timing, her size. But Clara kept showing up, kept learning, quiet, focused, like a storm brewing somewhere far away. Dom started paying more attention. One afternoon, he pulled her aside after practice. "You've got good instincts," he said gruffly, handing her a mouthguard. "Let's see what happens when someone hits you back." That was the first time she sparred. They put her in with Lena, one of the mid-tier fighters, tough, fast, sharp with her jabs. Clara took hit after hit. Her face reddened, her arms ached, and her breath came in short, panicked bursts. But then she started slipping punches. One, then two. She landed a clean body shot, light, but accurate. Dom nodded slightly. It wasn't magic. She didn't become a prodigy overnight. But something was happening. Something steady. Something real. The gym started to notice. The whispers didn't stop, but they changed. She's still gonna get wrecked. Why's Dom wasting time on her? But others were watching more closely now, especially Tyler, the gym's rising star, fast, lean, undefeated in local amateur fights. He had a chip on his shoulder and a punch like a whip crack. He wasn't a bully exactly. He just thought the world owed him a spotlight. And Clara? She was stealing attention that wasn't meant for her. He started challenging her more during drills. "You ever think about giving up?" he'd ask while circling her in partner footwork. "This really your dream? 'Cause it looks more like a midlife crisis." Clara said nothing, but Dom saw the way her jaw tightened, the way her punches grew more precise, controlled. One afternoon, after another quiet but solid session, Clara sat on the edge of the ring and finally said to Dom, "You don't have to believe in me." Dom raised an eyebrow. "I don't believe in a lot of people, but I believe in work, and you're putting in more of it than half the guys in here." She smiled, just a little. That was when Tyler made the challenge. It started as a joke, loud enough for the whole gym to hear. "Hey, coach, why don't we let Clara here get a real feel for boxing? You know, just one round. Me and her. Friendly, of course." Everyone laughed. Dom narrowed his eyes. "You want to spar her?" "Why not?" Tyler smirked. "She's been training, right? Let's see how far she's come." Clara looked at Dom. "I'll do it." The room went quiet. Dom hesitated just a second. Then he nodded. "One round, controlled, no knockouts." Tyler was already grinning. Clara stood up, wrapped her hands slowly. Her eyes weren't afraid. They were focused, and the storm that had been quietly brewing was just about to land. Clara stood in the ring like it was her final confessional. Her shoulders were square, mouth guard in place, eyes set not on Tyler's hands or his feet, but his chest, just like Dom taught her. The gym was buzzing now, fighters and trainers circling the ring like sharks that smelled blood in the water. Some pulled out their phones. Others leaned on the ropes, betting in whispers whether she'd even land a punch. Tyler bounced lightly on his feet, gloves up, his face the picture of cocky amusement. He wasn't nervous, not even close. Why would he be? He had 10 fights under his belt. He trained 6 days a week. Clara, to him, was a novelty, a joke that had gone on too long. Dom stepped between them, his voice low. "One round, 3 minutes. You touch gloves, you keep it clean. Tyler, you keep it light. Clara, protect yourself." They tapped gloves. The bell rang, and Tyler danced forward. For the first 30 seconds, it was a game. Tyler peppered her with jabs, fast, teasing flicks that never hit hard, but stung enough to rattle her. Clara kept her guard up, kept stepping back, her eyes reading him. The crowd chuckled every time she flinched. But then something shifted. At the 35-second mark, Tyler came in with a wide hook, flashy, unnecessary, and Clara ducked low, pivoted, and slipped to his left. It wasn't clean, but it worked. She countered with a short right to the ribs. It wasn't strong, but it landed. Dom grunted from outside the ring. "Nice." Tyler's expression twitched, just for a second. He stepped up the pace. Now the punches came sharper, closer. Clara took a hit to the shoulder, another to the side of her face guard. Her head snapped, but she stayed up. He tried an uppercut. She leaned back, barely missing it, her foot slipping on sweat-slick canvas. The crowd leaned in. This wasn't funny anymore. This was real. By the 2-minute mark, Clara was breathing hard, her arms heavy. Tyler's grin was gone. He was sweating now, too, annoyed that she hadn't gone down, frustrated that his hits weren't doing what they were supposed to. Then he did something he wasn't supposed to. He threw a full-power shot. It was a straight right, fast, too fast for her to dodge fully. It caught her across the jaw and her head whipped sideways. Gasps echoed around the gym. Dom stepped forward, ready to call it. But Clara didn't fall. She staggered, shook it off, then looked Tyler dead in the eyes, and smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, just enough to say, "You missed your chance." Tyler rushed in, trying to finish it. Another mistake. That's when it happened. He stepped in wide with a looping left. Clara planted her feet. Her right hand came up fast, straight, tight from the hip. It connected clean, right on the button. The sound echoed, a dull, smacking thud, followed by the sudden silence of everyone forgetting to breathe. Tyler dropped. He didn't stumble. He didn't wobble. He dropped, straight down, out cold before his knees even touched the mat. The gym exploded. Shouts, curses, someone knocking over a stool. Dom was already in the ring, waving off the round, checking on Tyler. The young fighter was groaning, dazed, blinking like he didn't know what universe he was in. Clara just stood there, breathing heavy, gloved hands still raised. One punch, that's all it took. The gym's energy shifted like a tide. People stared, others whispered. Some just watched her, mouths slightly open, like they'd seen something they didn't know how to process. Dom helped Tyler to his feet, gave him a hard look, then turned to Clara. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "You've been holding back." Clara shook her head. "I've just been learning." Later that evening, the video hit Instagram. The caption was simple: "She dropped him with one punch." It went viral overnight. By morning, Clara was no longer invisible. But that didn't mean the respect came easy. The days that followed were strange. The laughter had stopped, sure, but so had the lightness in the air. Some of the younger fighters avoided her completely, afraid to be the next video clip. Others tested her, harder than before, trying to prove Tyler was a fluke. Dom started training her separately. Early mornings, before the gym opened. Just him, Clara, and the ring. He made her shadow box with weighted gloves, spar with her eyes closed. He broke down every movement, every breath. "You've got power," he told her. "But that's not what makes a fighter. Control does, timing, patience. We're going to build you from the ground up." Clara never missed a session. In the quiet hours before the gym buzzed to life, she felt like she belonged. No noise, no mockery, just rhythm, pain, and purpose. One day, Dom brought her a faded newspaper clipping. It was an article from 15 years ago, a black and white photo of a young woman in a boxing pose, her hand raised in victory. "That's my sister," he said. "First woman to win the state amateur title. She quit after a car accident. People said she was crazy for fighting in the first place. They mocked her too." Clara studied the photo. "She looks like she didn't care what they thought," she said softly. Dom smiled. "She didn't. That's what made her dangerous." Clara folded the clipping carefully and slipped it into her duffel bag. She had no idea that what came next would push her further than she'd ever imagined, and test whether that one punch was luck or legacy. It wasn't long before whispers turned into invitations. A small amateur showcase downtown, Clara's first real fight. Dom asked her if she was ready. She nodded before he finished the question. But something had changed in her since the Tyler fight. Her punches had gotten sharper, her footwork smoother, but her silence grew deeper. He noticed the way she lingered after practice, staring at the lockers long after the others had left. How she flinched slightly whenever someone asked where she was from, what she used to do. Clara had secrets. Pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits quietly inside a person, coiled like a sleeping animal. Dom didn't push, but the night before her match, he found her on the gym's back stoop, sitting in the dark with her gloves in her lap, staring at nothing. "You scared?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. She shook her head slowly. "Not of the fight." He waited. "I used to be someone else," she said after a long pause. "I had a life, a job, a husband, a house with perfect white walls and lavender in the garden." Dom didn't move. "One day he broke a glass and I stepped on it by accident. He got angry because I bled on the floor, said I was careless. That was the first time. The first bruise." The silence between them was heavy. "I stayed," Clara whispered. "Too long. Long enough to forget who I was. When I finally left, I had $200 in a backpack. I slept in a shelter for 3 months. Got a job cleaning at a diner. That's how I saved enough for gym fees. She looked up at him, eyes shining but not crying. I came here because I needed to feel something that didn't belong to him. Something that was mine. Dom stepped closer, sat beside her. You earned every inch of it. She smiled faintly. Funny thing is, I didn't even want revenge. I just wanted to hit something that wouldn't hit back. Dom nodded. Tomorrow it will hit back. I know. They sat there a while longer, in silence. Two people with their own ghosts, keeping each other company. The arena wasn't big, but it was loud. Metal chairs, folding bleachers, cheap lights swaying overhead. The crowd buzzed with energy, eating nachos from paper trays and cheering every knockout like it was the main event in Vegas. Clara's opponent was a local favorite named Marcy Machine Gun Diaz, a stocky, hard-hitting fighter with fast hands and a vicious hook. Undefeated. Known for overwhelming her opponents early, before they could find rhythm. In the locker room, Clara laced up her boots. Dom taped her wrists, layer by layer, his hands methodical and steady. You don't need to prove anything to anyone out there, he said. I'm not here to prove, Clara replied, standing up, voice calm. I'm here to remember. The announcer called her name. It was surreal, hearing it echo through the space. In the blue corner, Clara Wynne. She walked out into the lights, the cheers, the sneers. She saw Tyler in the crowd, standing in the back, arms crossed but watching closely. She saw other fighters from Ironforge too. Lena, the receptionist, even some of the ones who used to mock her. She stepped into the ring and locked eyes with Marcy across the canvas. The woman was bouncing, grinning, already throwing practice combos in the air like she couldn't wait. The bell rang. Round 1. Marcy came in hot, just like they said she would. Hooks, jabs, quick footwork that forced Clara backward. The first punch caught her shoulder, the next grazed her ribs. The crowd roared. Clara didn't swing wild. She stayed tight, defense up, watching. Dom's voice rose from the corner. Let her spend herself. By the end of the first round, Clara had barely landed anything, but Marcy was breathing harder than expected. Round 2. Clara adjusted, started throwing small counters. Not to win, but to interrupt. A jab to stop the hook. A low left to slow Marcy's rush. Dom's voice again. You're leading now. She doesn't know it yet. But you are. Marcy's expression twisted. She rushed in, tried to overwhelm. That's when Clara caught her. A left hook that wasn't even that hard, but it snapped Marcy's head sideways. The crowd gasped. Marcy stumbled, regained her footing, furious. The bell rang. The crowd was no longer sure who they were rooting for. Round 3. This was it. They met in the center. Clara could feel the pain in her legs now, the burn in her shoulders. But she remembered everything Dom taught her, and something her old life had taught her too. How to take hits and stay standing. Marcy charged. Clara weaved under a wild right and came up with a punch so clean, so pure it felt like time slowed. A right cross to the jaw. Marcy froze. Stumbled back. Clara didn't follow up. She didn't have to. Marcy dropped to one knee. She got back up, barely before the count ended, but her eyes were glazed. Her hands wavered. The ref called it TKO. The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in stunned silence. Then came the applause, louder than Clara had ever heard. She didn't smile, didn't raise her hands. She just turned to Dom, who met her at the ropes, eyes shining with something that looked dangerously close to pride. You did it, he said. No, Clara whispered. I became it. That night, the fight video spread like wildfire. But the people watching didn't see just another underdog win. They saw a woman with no past they could Google, no Instagram with flashy captions. Just a fighter, a force, a storm that had found its name. 2 weeks after the fight, Clara stood alone in Ironforge gym, long before anyone else arrived. The bags hung still in the early light, and the ring sat quiet, waiting. She ran her fingers along the ropes, soft with wear, frayed in places. This place, this rough, loud, judgmental place, had somehow become her sanctuary, not because it was kind, but because it was honest. Dom arrived not long after, coffee in hand, not surprised to find her there. "You sleep here now?" he asked, raising a brow. Clara smiled. "Feels like I do." They stood in silence for a while. The buzz around her fight with Marcy hadn't died down. Local media picked up the story. Mystery Woman Floor's undefeated favorite. A few articles speculated about her past. Some tried to contact her. She ignored it all. She wasn't chasing fame, just freedom. "Got something for you," Dom said finally, reaching into his gym bag. He pulled out a small, worn envelope and handed it to her. Clara opened it slowly, revealing a folded flyer for a regional tournament, the kind that got real eyes, real scouts, real futures on the line. She stared at it, then looked up at him. "You think I'm ready for that?" Dom nodded. "I wouldn't give it to you if I didn't." Clara exhaled. Her hands trembled just slightly, not from fear, but the weight of the choice. This wasn't just another sparring match. This was a path, one she never thought she'd deserve. "I'll think about it," she said. Dom tilted his head. "You've already decided." She laughed softly. "Maybe I have." Later that day, Tyler approached her in the locker room, awkward, hands in his pockets, eyes darting like a kid about to confess he broke something. "I watched the fight again," he said, not meeting her eyes. Clara didn't speak. "You were incredible," he continued. "Not just the punch, the way you moved, the control. I was wrong about you." "You were cruel," she said calmly. "Not just wrong." He winced, nodding. "Yeah, I was." She let the silence stretch, then said, "Don't apologize with words. Change how you treat people." He looked up at her, surprised. "You forgive me?" Clara shrugged. "You were never my judge. I don't need your forgiveness to move on, but I hope you grow from it." Tyler swallowed hard and nodded. She walked past him, not unkind, just done with what he had to offer. That night, Clara returned to the small apartment above the diner where she still worked mornings. It wasn't much: a twin bed, cracked windows, a single lamp that flickered when the fridge kicked on. But it was hers. She pinned the tournament flyer to the wall, and beside it, she taped the newspaper clipping Dom had given her, the one of his sister, hand raised in victory. She looked at the two images, one from the past, one from the future. Then she dug through her bag until she found the pair of gloves she wore when she first sparred Tyler. The laces were worn out, the fabric stretched and faded. She held them for a long time. They weren't trophies. They were reminders of who she was, of what she'd survived, of the woman she'd built inch by inch, bruise by bruise, breath by breath. The tournament came faster than she expected. Weeks blurred into drills and sweat and early morning runs through cold streets. Dom trained her like she was already a champion. Not because she was, but because he believed she could become one. Clara fought 3 times in 2 days. Won the first with strategy, the second with heart, and the final with fire. She didn't knock her opponent out. She didn't have to. She controlled the ring, moved like she belonged in it, and when the final bell rang, the judges didn't hesitate. Unanimous decision. Clara winner. She stood there as her arm was raised, the noise crashing over her, flashes blinding. Her breath came hard, but her eyes didn't blink. She didn't cry. Not then. Later, in the hallway, as she peeled the tape off her wrists and Dom handed her a bottle of water, he said something she'd never forget. "You don't have to fight anymore if you don't want to." She looked up. "You've already won." Clara didn't answer right away. She thought of the woman who once stared at herself in a cracked mirror, wondering how she'd ended up so small, so scared. She thought of every punch she'd taken, every time someone laughed, every time she chose to keep going anyway. Then she said, "I do want to fight." Dom smiled. "Good." But not for revenge, not to prove anything. Then why? Clara tied her shoes slowly, stood, slung her bag over her shoulder. To remind myself, she said, that I'm still becoming. She walked out into the night, the cool air wrapping around her like a second skin. Somewhere, the world was still loud, still cruel. But in Clara's chest, there was only peace. And just beneath her heartbeat, the rhythm of a fighter who'd risen not for applause, not for titles, but for herself.